Jealousy isn't love, and this is something most people misunderstand in relationships. In fact, jealousy is often romanticized so much that people start believing it is a sign of deep care. They think if someone gets jealous, it means they love them deeply. But the truth is much more complex than that. Jealousy is not love. It is not proof of care. It is not even a healthy emotional signal most of the time. Jealousy is something deeper, something psychological, emotional, and often rooted in insecurity, fear, or attachment wounds. When someone gets jealous, it feels intense. It feels like passion. It feels like emotional attachment. It can even feel like love. But intensity is not always truth. Sometimes intensity is just emotional imbalance expressing itself in a strong way. And jealousy is one of those emotions that feels powerful but is often misunderstood. To truly understand jealousy, you need to understand what is happening inside the mind when it appears. Because jealousy is not a single emotion. It is a mixture of emotions layered together. It often includes fear of loss, insecurity, comparison, anxiety, attachment, and sometimes even past trauma. Let's go deeper. At its core, jealousy starts when the brain perceives a threat to emotional security. That threat could be real or imagined. It could be your partner talking to someone else, giving attention to another person, or even just being emotionally distant. The brain interprets this as, I might lose something important. And the moment loss is perceived, emotional systems activate. But here's the important part. What people call jealousy is not actually about the other person. It is about what that other person represents to them emotionally. For example, your partner is not just a person. They represent validation, attention, emotional safety, or self-worth. So when you feel they might shift their attention elsewhere, your brain reacts as if your emotional security is under threat. This is why jealousy feels so strong, because it is not just about love. It is about emotional dependency. Now let's go deeper into the psychology of jealousy. One of the biggest roots of jealousy is insecurity. Insecurity does not always mean low confidence. It means uncertainty about your own value in comparison to others. When someone feels unsure about their worth in a relationship, they become hyper-aware of potential threats. So even small situations start feeling big. A normal conversation becomes suspicious. A friendly interaction becomes a warning sign. And a simple delay in response becomes emotional danger. But this is not reality. This is perception filtered through insecurity. And perception feels real even when it is not accurate. Now let's talk about another layer, attachment style. People with anxious attachment are more prone to jealousy because they fear abandonment. Their mind constantly scans for signs of rejection or replacement. So when their partner interacts with someone else, their emotional system activates quickly. People with avoidant attachment may also feel jealousy, but they express it differently. Instead of showing it openly, they may withdraw emotionally or detach. People with secure attachment still feel jealousy sometimes, but they do not let it control their behavior. They process it logically and emotionally without reacting impulsively. So, jealousy is not equal for everyone. It depends on emotional development and attachment patterns. Now let's understand something very important. Jealousy is often confused with love because both create emotional intensity. But love creates peace with intensity. Jealousy creates anxiety with intensity. Love feels grounded. Jealousy feels unstable. Love builds trust. Jealousy destroys it. Love allows freedom. Jealousy restricts it. So if something makes you feel insecure, anxious, and emotionally unstable, it is not love. It is fear wearing the mask of love. Now let's go deeper into comparison. A major trigger for jealousy is comparison. The moment you start comparing yourself with others, emotional insecurity increases. You start asking questions like, am I better than them? Are they more attractive? Will my partner choose them over me? But comparison is dangerous because it shifts focus from connection to competition. And relationships are not competitions. They are connections. The moment you turn love into comparison, you introduce fear into the relationship. And fear always distorts emotional reality. Now let's talk about another hidden aspect. Ego. Sometimes jealousy is not even about emotional insecurity. It is about ego. The ego wants exclusivity. It wants to feel special. It wants to be the only source of attention. So when attention is shared, ego reacts. This is why jealousy can sometimes feel like possession rather than love. It is not "I care about you." It becomes "you belong to me emotionally." But love does not possess. Love allows. Now let's go deeper into past experiences. Jealousy is often shaped by previous emotional wounds. If someone has been cheated on, ignored, replaced, or emotionally hurt in the past, their brain becomes sensitive to similar situations in the future. So even harmless situations can trigger strong emotional reactions, not because of the present moment, but because of unresolved past experiences. This is why healing is important, because unhealed emotional pain always shows up in new relationships. Now let's talk about control. One of the biggest misconceptions about jealousy is that it is a sign of care. But in reality, jealousy often leads to controlling behavior. Checking messages, questioning interactions, limiting freedom, or trying to control social behavior. But control is not love. Control is fear trying to create safety. And anything built on fear cannot create healthy connection. Healthy relationships are built on trust, not control. Now let's understand something deeper. Jealousy is not always bad, but it is always informative. Jealousy is a signal, not a truth. It is telling you something about your emotional state. It is revealing your insecurities, your fears, your attachment needs, or your emotional triggers. So instead of acting on jealousy, you should understand it. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this? Is it based on reality or fear? Is this about my partner's behavior or my internal insecurity? This kind of reflection transforms jealousy from destructive emotion into self-awareness. Now let's talk about emotional dependency. When someone becomes your primary source of happiness, jealousy increases. Because now you are not just afraid of losing a partner. You are afraid of losing emotional stability. So even small threats feel big. This is why healthy emotional independence is important. When your happiness is not fully dependent on one person, jealousy naturally reduces. Now let's go deeper into perception versus reality. Jealousy often distorts perception. It makes you assume intentions that are not real. It makes you interpret neutral actions as emotional threats. It turns imagination into fear-based reality. For example, your partner talking to someone does not automatically mean emotional betrayal, but jealousy can make it feel like betrayal. So what you feel is not always what is happening. And this gap between feeling and reality is where most relationship problems begin. Now let's understand emotional maturity. Emotionally mature people also feel jealousy, but they do not let it control their behavior. They pause, they reflect, they communicate calmly. They do not accuse immediately. They do not assume worst-case scenarios. Instead of saying, "Why are you talking to them?" they ask, "I felt a bit uncomfortable in that situation. Can we talk about it?" This kind of communication builds understanding instead of conflict. Now let's talk about trust. Trust is the opposite of jealousy, but trust is not blind. Trust is built through consistency, communication, and emotional safety. When trust is strong, jealousy loses power. When trust is weak, jealousy increases. But here is the deeper truth. You cannot eliminate jealousy completely, but you can understand it so well that it no longer controls your actions. Now let's talk about healing jealousy. Healing does not mean never feeling jealous again. Healing means becoming aware of jealousy without reacting destructively. It means recognizing it as a feeling, not a command. You learn to sit with discomfort instead of acting on it. You learn to self-soothe instead of controlling others. You learn to communicate instead of assuming. And slowly, emotional reactions become more balanced. Now let's come to the final realization. Jealousy is not proof of love. It is proof of emotional attachment mixed with insecurity, fear, and ego. Love is calm. Jealousy is reactive. Love trusts. Jealousy doubts. Love expands freedom. Jealousy restricts it. So the next time you feel jealousy, don't immediately label it as love. Pause and ask yourself what is really happening inside you. Because jealousy is not about the other person. It is about your internal emotional world reacting to perceived loss. And once you understand that, you stop being controlled by jealousy and start understanding yourself on a much deeper level.